Wildcarding in game week 6 or save it for a future date? That is what we are going to be discussing in my first transfer plans for FPL in game week 6. I've got 2 free transfers and a bit of money in the bank and a definite need to buy Erling Haaland for Burnley at home this week. However, I can do that without activating the wildcard. And with a potential injury to the likes of Cole Palmer, it might mean that the chip isn't quite as needed as maybe as I thought it would be this week. In today's video, we're going to talk about what the wildcard draft would look like if I went on to play it this week, whether I would go with Haaland, Salah, whether I still think there's room for someone like a Gyökeres in the team, or actually if I'm best off saving it until the other window in game week 8 and just using my 2 transfers this week to buy Haaland. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new to the channel. And game week 5 actually went quite well. I did play my bench boost. We won't talk about it in full. I'm actually recording just as Manchester City Arsenal is in the final 10 minutes. I wanted to see how that game went before I uploaded and recorded this video, just because we will talk about both of those teams in quite a lot of detail. So I needed to see the result and how both teams performed. And it's currently 1-0 to Manchester City with an Erling Haaland goal and a Reinders assist. Kroos currently a clean sheet for Manchester City in that game as well. So I actually am on a green arrow, and actually the bench boost has been massively beneficial for me. My bench boost was Dubravka, who got 4, Pedro Porro, who got 1. So at the end of Saturday, I had 5 points on my bench boost, and it did not look great. But then Senesi, also as part of my bench boost, scored 9 points, moving my bench boost total so far up to 14 points. And then Reinders is currently on 6 with an assist, the 2 appearance, and a clean sheet point. Of course, that might change between now and the end of that match. So that would be a 20-point bench boost, which is definitely more than I expected this week, and absolutely I would have taken it. When you start to look at some of the players in my actual team in game week 5, Williams of Nottingham Forest and Bruno Fernandes were basically the only 2 to really help me out this week. A lot of blanks across the board. Agbadou not doing very well against Leeds. Sanchez, of course, the big thing, getting sent off in game week 5. Very disappointing for that. -3 points because, of course, he continues to lose points. The more goals that Chelsea concede, even if he's not on the pitch, those are just the rules. If you get a red card as a goalkeeper or defender, you still lose points when your team concedes goals because you're technically still to blame for what is going on. So that isn't great. And apart from that, and a couple of returns in my 11, it was another week full of blanks. So I did say that I would look and see how Aston Villa in particular performed before deciding on whether I would play my wild card. Now, a couple of things happened this week which have impacted my thinking a little bit. First one is the Sanchez red card, which I thought would make me activate the wild card. But then he actually got sent off for denial of a goal-scoring opportunity, which is only a 1-match suspension. And a red card suspension can be served in the cup, which means Sanchez will serve his suspension against Lincoln City midweek and actually be back available for game week 6 at home to Brighton. So I do still have Sanchez. Now, whether you think he definitely plays or not after he's done something so crazy early on in the game and got himself sent off is another matter, but he is technically available for Chelsea. And the other one is Cole Palmer. Now, I would almost certainly have included Cole Palmer on my wildcard in game week 6. But it looks like he's got this recurring groin injury, which basically rules him out of being a good pick until we see him start a number of games back to back and play a good amount of minutes and look injury free before we can go and buy him. And now people activating their wildcard in game week 6 are basically going to Bruno Fernandes instead. Bukayo Saka has just returned for Arsenal, so people will potentially look at going with Saka over Bruno instead of going with Palmer, who is a very similar price, and that is understandable. But Bruno Fernandes has Brentford and Sunderland in the next 2 fixtures, who Brentford have just conceded 3 to Fulham, and Sunderland, although have actually looked quite good, some of their defensive data hasn't been too bad, is still a good fixture. And if people are now wildcarding and including Bruno, I do wonder how much I need to change my team right now in order to play the wildcard. The big disappointment, though, are a few players specifically. Lucas Paqueta, who just hasn't worked. West Ham look truly awful. They go away to an Everton team this week who do look pretty good defensively. Chris Wood, they play in Europe away to Real Betis on Wednesday night before they play Sunderland. Now, they do need points against Sunderland, but there's a decent enough chance that he might not start that game. And even if he does, he did get some chances against Burnley, but No returns for him since game week 1. And then I don't need to speak anymore against the double Aston Villa. Another blank. Watkins did have some chances late on in the game, but Rodgers got taken off early. And actually looking at my team for game week 6 at the moment, I've actually benched Rodgers. Fulham are a very good defensive side. And I've actually decided if I don't wildcard, I would probably play Lucas Paqueta on the Monday night fixture on penalties over going with Rodgers, just so I don't have to have the double up on Aston Villa in my team. So I don't think my team screams I definitely need to wildcard this week, and my wildcard is not active. I have not made any transfers at time of recording, and I don't think I'm going to be activating my wildcard tonight, although I'm not guaranteeing that I won't, but I don't think that is going to be the case. What I'm really looking at, and I spoke about this last week, is a route to buy Erling Haaland without making any without activating the wildcard, sorry. And that would be downgrading Mo Salah to Semenyo, who is predicted to rise in price potentially tonight, and upgrading either Chris Wood or Ollie Watkins to Erling Haaland. Now, I do have the money to go either Watkins or Chris Wood to Haaland. In deciding which of them I'd be most likely to sell, I do look at the game week 7 fixture and think Watkins is slightly better. This week, I would prefer Chris Wood at home to Sunderland, and Watkins has Fulham at home. In game week 7, though, Watkins does have Burnley at home, whereas Chris Wood goes away to Newcastle. And I know we do have the European fixtures for both Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest this midweek, and I'm likely to lose value on players elsewhere in my team, but I think Chris Wood is the one that's most likely to go in that double swap with the 2 free transfers, Salah down to Semenyo and Chris Wood up to Haaland, which would give me a game week 6 team that looks like this. Sanchez in goal, Williams, Senesi, Pedro Porro, Semenyo, Fernandes, Paqueta, Reinders, João Pedro, Watkins, Haaland. If I was to wildcard, what would I include that would be anything different? So let's have a look at what a wildcard draft would look like for me in game week 6 if I was to play it. I'd probably go Donnarumma in goal. It would be him or David Raya. I have been impressed with him, and I do think Manchester City look better defensively with him in, and the short-term fixtures for him look really good. Into defence, we've gone with Gabriel, Tarkowski, Senesi, with Anderson and Richards on the bench. If I needed a little bit more money, I would probably downgrade Richards or Anderson to a 4 million defender, but it would most likely be Richards just because I love Anderson for the long term. I know the short-term fixtures for Fulham are not great, but on wildcard, I would still want him for the long term. In midfield, right? So I have Reinders, I have Fernandes, I'd be buying Semenyo, and then Ndai is definitely better than Lucas Paqueta. I definitely agree with you there. And then up front, I have João Pedro, I'd be buying Haaland, and I wouldn't have Gyökeres, who goes away to Newcastle, and instead I'd have Ollie Watkins, who's going to drop in price several times, I'm sure, but does have Fulham and Burnley in the next 2. And the plan would always be to wildcard in game week 8. I'm not going to delay it further than that. But if I just flick back to my team for you, do I think that that team that I look at there is definitely better than the wildcard team? I'm not sure there is. It's just the value thing. Like my defense, Williams at home to Sunderland, Senesi, and then Pedro Porro. Like, I think I'd rather Porro than Gabriel. I think it's quite close. Maybe the wildcard is very marginally better. But in game week 8, I do think there's a big chance that we look to go with Salah and Haaland, and having the wildcard to do that might be the most sensible thing to do. So at the moment, the plan on Sunday evening will be to make 2 transfers of downgrading Salah to Semenyo and upgrading either Watkins or Chris Wood to Haaland before the price changes. And then that will buy me a little bit more time, maybe on Monday, Tuesday, in order to decide if I want to wildcard or just roll with the team looking like this. And the next update that I will do of whether I'm wildcarding or not will be in the newsletters this week. So FPL Wrapped is a newsletter I do with Ross FPL Raptor and Oscar FPL Focal. I believe both of them are looking to wildcard this week. So there's going to be lots of useful stuff, particularly if you're playing the chip this week. On Thursday, we have the free version. It's just literally all you need is an email. But on Monday, we will be doing the premium version of the newsletter where we will all have an update. If you just want to sign up, get an idea of what the free one's like, links in the description, and you can also upgrade to the premium one there with that link. And just while I've been recording, Arsenal have just equalised to make it 1-1 in that game between Arsenal and Manchester City, which means Reinders does lose his clean sheet point, but he has also just hit defensive contribution. So he drops 1 but gains 2, which I think moves my bench boost to 21 points, which is great. And I think that's the first time he has hit defensive contributions so far this season. So that might give me a very small green arrow even further from where I went to, which was about 2.2 million. If I'm lucky, I might creep inside the top 2 million, but I looked like I've halved my rank this week. It is nice to finally have a good week, even though we're still in the depths of the millions of ranks. So just to go back to my team, the plan today will be to do Mo Salah and either Watkins or Chris Wood out. I just need to do a little bit more planning with my team, but I expect it will be Chris Wood, despite the fact that Ollie Watkins is most likely to drop in price a couple of times to Erling Haaland and Semenyo. And then my team will look quite good. And it's just a decision of whether I want to wildcard to maybe get some Arsenal and be ready for game week 7, or wait until game week 8, by when I might be looking to move Bruno and go back to a Haaland Salah draft. Because from game week 8 onwards, the Liverpool fixtures look really good. And outside of Salah, like Isak's getting benched. Isak and Ekatike are going to rotate. Gakpo's minutes and returns are not that assured. We've just seen Wirtz get benched. It does feel like if I want Liverpool, it only feels like Mo Salah at the moment. Now, Isak might prove me wrong, but wildcarding in game week 8 to be able to go Haaland and Salah might be the best route. But if I wildcard now, with some of the other fixtures short term for the likes of Arsenal and the likes of Manchester United, I might not be able to squeeze Salah in. So that's a couple of decisions I've still got to make. And I think the most likely thing remains that I will wildcard in game week 8. And I know I said what Aston Villa do this week might dictate it, but the Cole Palmer injury in particular, meaning that I don't want to make the Fernandes to Palmer swap on wildcard and free up money to do that, means I still think that game week 8 feels best for my team. So the wildcard is not active. Time recording, I've not made any transfers, but I do plan on making a couple tonight, probably to buy Erling Haaland and Semenyo, depending on predicted price rises once again. I can't go without Haaland anymore, and his rises in price are absolutely killing me. That is all for the transfer plans video. If you do want to have more info on wildcard, there'll be plenty of stuff out this week. Plus in the newsletter, as I said, I'll be posting stuff on Twitter as well. That's where I'm at. I don't think I'm likely to wildcard this week. Well, I don't think I'm unlikely. I'd say I'm 70% that I won't and maybe 30% that I will. So that's the kind of split that we're at. And I don't think it will be going tonight, despite some of the price changes that are predicted. Have a good one. If you do have questions which you want answered, I know this video has been very focused on my team and very focused on the Game Week 6 wildcard. If you have other questions, we will, of course, answer those in the transfer targets video, in the complete guide video later on this week. So drop any of that you have in the comment section down below. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new. Here's to going back to a couple good game weeks on the bounce, and I'll catch you all very soon.